We saw the first 3 episodes of season 2 of The Rings of Power.
Yeah, I've seen the 4th one too.
Oh, did it come out?
Yeah, it came out today. Yeah,
Oh my God.
it's.
I could have watched it.
Don't worry about it.
Oh boy.
Like I actually took a lot of notes about what happened, but I don't know if I want to even go through the plot.
We have to, because there's people that don't watch it and they watch this just to get it secondhand. Let's summarize season 1 first, because that's easy. There's nothing happened in season 1.
Yeah. There's Galadriel, and she's like a girl boss version of Galadriel from Lord of the Rings. Takes place in the Second Age, I think. So it's
Right.
long before Lord of the Rings, which takes place in the Third Age. She somehow gets onto like a raft with a mysterious man named Halbrand. He's a very sexy but sinister rat person that she kind of is hot for, even though she was already like married to her husband at this time in the real lore, but that doesn't matter. They wanted a nice, sexy, evil shipping with her.
Yep.
They
wanted it
do
for
this in every frickin' show.
Yeah, Celeborn. That's her husband. Yep.
Then there's Isildur. He's like a Numenorian. We meet him.
Well, the whole thing is that Numenor is like Krypton, or it's eventually going to flood and be no more, and so they're trying to tell a story about the events leading up to that. I assume that happens in season 5 or something. They end up riding with elves to try to stop orcs that are overtaking villages in the Southlands.
There's an evil elf named Adar, which they made up for the show as well. Adar is leading an army of orcs, and he finds like something to create to put a key into a lock, which makes this water flow into a volcano, which turns the Southlands into Mordor.
It's the dumbest shit you've ever seen in your life.
And then there's something, the dwarves are finding Mithril, and the Mithril ends up going to Celebrimbor, and Sauron, who's secret Sauron, he helps Celebrimbor make the rings. And then Galadriel finds out that Sauron is Sauron, and yeah, I don't know, and they make the rings at the end of the season. And they all act dumb. Like, that's the main thing about this show, is they all act like these 1,000-year-old elves just act like dumb children all the time. Like, I can see the humans being like that. They're supposed to be impulsive and this and that. But everyone acts like that. Everyone acts like hot-headed, bumbling idiots in every scene, depending on the plot. This second season is even slower, because like if you even like I look at the list of things that happen in the episode, it's like it's nothing. So it starts off with like Sauron they do a prequel scene here where Sauron's played by a different actor, and he's Julius Caesared by a bunch of orcs, and Adar, who's played by the new actor. And then he turns into a black goo Sauron, and he like eats rats in a cave and centipedes, and then he like comically flips around in the snow, and then he eats a woman that happens to like pass by, and then he becomes Halbrand. And then Halbrand comes across like a group of Southerners, and one of them like speaks in positive aphorisms for every line.
It's like, don't give up hope. Life is worth living. Eat, pray, love. Jesus is with you.
It's like what dumb like millennials and Gen Z people think like, I don't know, wise Tolkien sayings would be, but they can't write anything. What
a She-Hulk writer thinks Tolkien would say.
Yeah.
I'm a stupid millennial.
He goes on a boat with this man with the aphorisms, and the men with the aphorisms, he has the heraldry that he will steal and use in later season, or the previous season. And the boat is attacked by a monster, and then Halbrand's in sea. He meets with Galadriel, and that's the flashback.
It's just plot. We didn't even talk about Gandalf at any point in any of this.
Yeah, the Gandalf and the halflings are wandering around the desert for fucking ever. They make a mystery box about his name, because they're talking about his name. Like, oh, what could my name be? Are they going to pretend it's Gandalf this whole time, and then it's going to be Saruman? Like, I I can tell something stupid like that could happen.
It's like the opposite of storytelling. It reminds me a bit of. Did you ever watch that Gotham show ever?
No.
They made like a Commissioner Gordon prequel series, and like Bruce Wayne's a kid, and so you were seeing very early versions of the villains, but then they couldn't really help themselves, and they kind of just did full blown versions of them in some cases, but not others. And there's no story. There's no story.
There's member berries, like Isildur is in like he gets captured by spiders, and so he has to fight baby Shelob, and you're like, oh look, it's gonna be Shelob. Or like they'll say it reminds me of later seasons of Game of Thrones where they'll say lines that remind you of the Peter Jackson films, but they're like out of context and weird and don't really make sense. Like there's that one orc who's like, do we have to go to war? I have a family. And he like goes over to his like hideous wife and child and
licks them.
And it's like, look, they're sympathetic. They actually have families, and they don't really want war. It's just the toxic male that's leading them that wants it.
Hey, we should make a union.
It's the same shit. Like, what if the Sith were good and not bad? It's like, it's the same shit.
It's a lot more complex than you've been told. It's not good guys and bad guys. That's for children.
Yeah.
Or orcs who were birthed out of nutsacks in the crevices of hell actually have families and aren't very violent by their own nature.
Minch back on the menu, boys.
Like, come on, man. Like, this is all artistic expression is to you. I mean, as far as I can tell, Sauron is evil. At least, I'll give him that.
So yeah, the dwarves figure out that they can't like talk to the mountain anymore, and the lights, they have like a light system for some reason. It shatters, and then like Durin and his wife Disa, like she's trying to like sing to the mountain, and it won't sing back to her or something. They're like making convolutedly making problems for each of these societies to want the rings. And then Sauron goes to Celebrimbor, and he becomes the like because they're going back to like the real lore and making him the Anatar, the bearer of gifts. No, it's only to I don't know, just be like, you remember this from the lore, but it doesn't make sense because we set up something completely different.
I heard they did that late too. They were like, okay, let's do Anatar.
And Sauron is just the same actor wearing a wig, so it's comical.
Right. That's what didn't make sense to me. Just from a film language perspective, they set up the idea that like, okay, he's like a shapeshifter. He takes different forms, and so he was just played by an altogether different actor in the first episode. Then he becomes Halbrand, so he's like a different actor. But then, like that same actor, he wants to show Celebrimbor that he's the same guy. But he also needs to now be Anatar.
And then on Numenor, there's the plot where the queen is like, her father died, so she's going to be like named the queen. But then like Carl Benjamin and all the incels like plot with Isildur's like sister with the big knockers to like steal the queenship from her. So there's that whole thing. It just sucks.
There's like a populist uprising against her with this with whatever his name, Faisano.
Yeah, that's Carl Benjamin. And then hey Paisanos. And yeah, like an eagle comes down, and they're like, oh, an eagle has chosen him. And yeah, so
at least one indicator of quality of a story is whether or not you can describe it in some kind of crystalline way. So remember, like we were talking about House of the Dragon, and I said, like, you know, the first season was very clearly about like a father who can't keep his family together and whose legacy will be tarnished by his inability to unite his family. What's the story of Batman? A boy witnesses his parents die and decides that nobody will ever suffer that kind of trauma ever again. What's the story of Lord of the Rings? Through incredible sacrifice, the smallest people preserving all that is good in the world by protecting it against true evil. What is Star Wars? You know, it's about redeeming your father. You know, Right. Like that's why these things are enduring, is because there is this, what's The Hobbit? The Hobbit is about stepping outside your home, embracing the adventure by just being like, all right, well, it's very much like making Solo or something where you're like, let's show you the Kessel Run and
let's show you. And in this newest episode, it's the same shit. It's like they show you like Tom Bombadil, but it doesn't make any fucking sense. It's just like stupid. It's just like you showed it because we know what Tom Bombadil is. And they show Barrow-wights, but it doesn't make any sense. They just showed it because you know what Barrow-wights are from the books.
I think probably I would not have watched this season at all had it not been for you. I felt pressured. You were like, I'm watching it, damn it. I'm like, okay.
I mean, it's still fun. It's still fun to like watch it and be like, what the fuck are they doing?
Can you imagine a real person like popping this on for their entertainment? Like, what? Like they don't have a podcast. They have no reason to discuss it. They just need something to watch, and they watch this.
Yeah. Well, apparently the audience has been cut in half since last season.
There's like no excuse for why a season 2 got created.
The reason why it exists anyway is because Jeff Bezos wanted his own Game of Thrones. So he bought whatever he could of Lord of the Rings, because he doesn't have full rights. That's why there's not hobbits in it.
He probably figured, Game of Thrones is this big George R.R. Martin thing. We're not going to get our own because there's not another one. So let's go to the original one. It was just too big of a task.
You can tell they're spending a lot of money on it, but there's no story. They hired hacks. I mean, these are like J.J. Abrams proved hacks.
Dumbasses.
And dumbasses, so it's the whole mystery box thing.
Like how many minutes of actual story are in this thing? 0? I think like there actually is like no event that is like necessary to impart to somebody.
Well, because you have a good guy, you have very good guys, but they act kind of like idiots, and then you have the bad guy, and the bad guy doesn't make any sense.
Like, did you know that Sauron had a power struggle with a different bad guy at one time? Like, I don't give a shit. Why would I care?
Yeah, and so in Sauron, he's making these rings because he wants to control things, but it's like these guys suck anyway, so hey, I kind of want them to win. So
that's just it. I was like, all right, like, is there any version of this that could work? And I was like, well, if you're gonna give me a Sauron prequel, if I'm stuck with a Sauron prequel, then show me Sauron coming into existence. The first episode of season 1 had a prologue where they're like, and we fought Morgoth, and Sauron was there, and he's our big bad guy. Like they already jumped forward in time, where they're like, Sauron's a big deal. Galadriel lives in fear of him. So I'm like, maybe go further back, because that sounds like maybe the more interesting stuff. You said something like, at what point did every show become Star Trek Discovery? Which that's a JJ through line too. There is still this thing, much like Acolyte, where you're like, I see the money. Like I see somebody on a horse in an expensive location shot nicely, but like the camera's shaking and the color correction's weird and the actor sucks. So like everything, like it doesn't come together,
I don't know. Didn't they like chop down a whole forest in like England to film this? I'm like, just leave the trees there. Leave the trees.
Ruining lives. Like,
the trees were more important than this.
What do you like more, The Acolyte or Rings of Power?
The Acolyte, because the episodes were 34 minutes.
Yeah, that's the reason.
I think they're definitely of this, like the same ilk.
I'm definitely able to like Acolyte keeps my attention better. I would say the number one reason that something is boring is because you know that it's not going anywhere, right? So you hear all the time, you're like, oh, I like a slow burn, or I like a slower paced movie. That I'm not necessarily bored by that. Well, the reason that you wouldn't be bored by a 45-minute suspense sequence or something, that's slow and morose. Well, it's because you know that it's headed somewhere. And so you're leaning into the scene, you're watching the scene, you're watching the details, you're waiting for the event, you're bringing expectation.
Yeah. I feel like we've been 13 hours of this, and I don't even feel like it started yet.
Well, and the reason you don't feel like it started yet is because you have no clue where it could even possibly be going. That would be interesting.
And you think about like the original Fellowship of the Ring, like how much, like even in the first scene, 2 minutes, when Frodo just gets up and his eyes light up when he sees Gandalf, you're like, I get it. immediately.
It sparkles. It's like you're like, I'm in Middle Earth, and you see Ian McKellen's face, and you see the Shire and the prologue, and I think from the moment you hear Kate Blanchett whispering, yeah, it's masterful. I mean, we are talking about like one of the best films ever made.
But still, they're doing something with this property. And they took 13 hours to do fuck all.
Yeah, I think I am. Well, am I offended? Yeah, I'm pretty fucking offended. This is pretty shitty. Star Wars, it's harder to be offended because it's been abused for a while. Lord of the Rings, yeah, you had your bad Hobbit trilogy or whatever, but like, I give the Hobbit trilogy a little bit of slack. I mean, it's not great. It's not good, but it is good if you cut it into a 4-hour fan edit. There's a movie to make. It's just they made too much fucking movie. It feels like a story was ordered, and they were like, "How many episodes?" They're like 8, and you have to make 8 episodes, and you gotta. Okay, so everybody will be busy with something. It's like a busy work show.
It is busy work. It's like what happens next? I don't know. They find spiders. He's in a spider lair and he has to get out. Let's do that scene. Okay, what are we going to do next? Well, the movies didn't do Tom Bombadil. The Gandalf meets Tom Bombadil.
The Trey and Matt thing of and then.
You're just watching, it's like, this happened, and then this happens, and then this happens. That's when you're in a movie just going, what the f*** am I watching this movie for? Just like, this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. That's not a movie, that's not a story.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.